Hi there, this is Nicholas Arcicada, and this is the top 50 horror movies. I've got a list compiled here. We're going to go down them just like how I went back the top 50 sci-fi movies a while ago. So let's get right into it. As with before, I'm trying to shed some light on some movies that I really personally enjoy that I don't think get enough credit, and also some of the favorites that everyone knows and loves. And we're going to go fast, so try to keep up as we take a deep dive into my top 50 horror movies of all time. At number 50, we have the Blair Witch Project. You know, call it what you will, but the Blair Witch Project is nothing if not a very creative movie. The acting is really bad, you know, because the actors are all amateurs, and they're bad at acting, and they're bad at acting genuine, and they're bad at acting real. So, it's hard to suspend your disbelief for the Blair Witch Project, but it is a very creative concept. I like that. Also, it's a good found footage movie. You have to hand it to it in that regard. Now, obviously, the Blair Witch Project has a really split critical opinion. Some people love it, some people hate it. I'm of the opinion that it's just mediocre, but it is historically significant. And if you really kind of put yourself out of it, you can kind of buy into the narrative that's going. And even though the acting is like really bad, but that's what happens when you get a bunch of amateur actors and tell them to go into the forest and make believe. The Blair Witch is a cool concept, and it's there really aren't that many good found footage movies, because a lot of found footage movies are either really lazy and just kind of use the found footage as like an excuse to make a shitty looking movie, or they're overproduced and they don't look like something you could shoot on a camera. The Blair Witch Project is charming because it really does look like something you could get on a camera. And for that, I think it's a fun horror movie to watch. At 49, we have another witch movie, The Love Witch. I'm just putting this on here because I like the way it looks. It looks startlingly authentic to the 60s, and that's the vibe it's going for, and that's the vibe it gets. The Love Witch is clearly made with a lot of research and people thinking about exactly how everything is going to appear on screen. The cinematography is great in The Love Witch, so I'm just putting it on here. Better than the Blair Witch Project. At 48, we have Dead End. Some people, again, don't like Dead End that much, but I think it's kind of fun, it's a lot better than a lot of 2000s horror movies like Saw or stuff, and that Dead End kind of feels like a prolonged 2-hour episode of The Twilight Zone, even if, none of the characters are that likable, and the story is, really weak. It's good fun, and you can tell that it is an original idea, so I like that, original premise to Dead End. And you might not see the ending coming, I sure didn't. At number 47, we have the Australian cult classic Patrick. That's right, we're not talking that shitty starfish from the SpongeBob show. We're talking the comatose patient with the telekinetic powers, Patrick. I think Patrick is pretty gosh dang spooky, if you ask me. Underrated, as are many Australian things. Patrick doesn't get as much credit as he should, because it's a pretty gosh dang cool movie, so you should definitely have a go at Patrick if you haven't seen it. It's pretty creepy. At number 46, we have Scream. Billed as the self-aware slasher movie, everyone's like, oh, these are the rules and so, and there's a new one coming out pretty soon. And I think Scary Movie is way funnier. Like, if you go into Scream thinking it's going to be funny, it's not funny. It's really, heavy-handed. And, Wes Craven was originally going to call Scream Scary Movie, but thank gosh Scary Movie exists. It's way funnier. But Scream is good mainly just because of the opening scene with Drew Barrymore, iconic. After that, the part with Courtney Cox and everything, you can probably skip that. Or is Courtney Cox in Scream 2? I forget. Scream is a pretty forgettable franchise, except the part with Drew Barrymore is, really good. That 5 minutes is just iconic, Drew Barrymore. Classic. At number 45, we have The Machinist with Christian Bale. Now, let it be said, I do not like Christian Bale. I don't like him as American Psycho. Don't like him as Batman. But The Machinist, I think, works because of the script and because Christian Bale is given something to do. And I think The Machinist is forgotten. Like, why is everyone thinking American Psycho is his best movie? It's The Machinist, hands down. The Machinist is fucking terrifying. I remember seeing this, and it scared the living daylights out of me. The Machinist is really scary. And some people will call it like a psychological thriller or whatever, but it's horror through and through. It's creepy. The Machinist is it'll catch you off guard. At 44, we have the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's not the best or anything, but for what it's worth, you can tell that a lot of time and effort went to the Rocky Horror Picture Show. With a lot of the songs are really good. Time Warp's good. Whatever Happened to Saturday Night is good. When Meatloaf comes in on his motorcycle and starts mowing everyone down, that's a fun time. And the sequel, Shock Treatment, sucks. But for what it's worth, Rocky Horror Picture Show is a fun and tasteful homage, and Tim Curry's great. So it's the best horror-themed musical. So check out Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's worth it. At 43, we have Seven, David Fincher's exciting tale of the 7 deadly sins serial killer tracked down by Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. I think Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman make an excellent duo. The killer's MO is really well developed. I think, for one, that Seven deserves to be remembered more, and it's easily one of the best 90s horror movies. Very gruesome, very grotesque, very disturbing. It is a gosh dang disturbing and brutal movie. It really doesn't hold back. At number 42, we have a foreign movie, Good Night Mommy. I remember seeing this on the big screen when it first came out, and it's something else. I mean, Europe can just put out horror movies like nothing else can. Unlike on the sci-fi list, I think horror hasn't really gone down in quality during the 2010s the same way sci-fi has. So there's going to be quite a few 2010s horror movies on this list. Good Night Mommy is just really creepy, has a really original premise, and with a lot of movies being about creepy kids, Good Night Mommy's like, what if there was a creepy parent? And everyone says The Babadook is good. That's not on this list, but Good Night Mommy definitely is, because it's like pure nightmare fuel. Number 41, we got the Stepford Wives. The Stepford Wives isn't remembered as much as some of Ira Levin's other projects, like Boys from Brazil and Rosemary's Baby, but I think the Stepford Wives it has very interesting things to say about the women's liberation movement and feminism, which was going on back in the 1970s. I think Ira Levin, really can't go wrong with them. And it's darkly comedic, which is fun. The Stepford Wives, cool concept, really creepy stuff, just to think about, creepy stuff. Stepford Wives, all around great movie. If you haven't seen it, it's underrated. Number 40, we got Mandy. This is the movie that put Nick Cage back on the map, and I think, for one, Nick Cage never really had a low point. I mean, he's always been weird and out there, and I think he really works in a movie like Mandy, which is a weird, out there movie. This movie just screams aesthetic. It's like 50 barrels of just pumping adrenaline right into your gut. And Jeremiah Sand, for what it's worth, fantastic antagonist. I like the mythical themes that go on between Red and Sand, and the exciting ideological battle between them. And when Nick Cage turns his head and he's covered in blood and he's like smiling, that's really creepy. Nobody can smile quite like Nick Cage can. Great movie. Mandy is just phenomenal, and it deserves the hype it's got. At 39, we got Dracula, the original, with Bela Lugosi. I hate the Hammer movies with Christopher Lee because he's British, and Dracula isn't British. He's, from the Slavic countries. And Bela Lugosi is from the Slavic countries, so his portrayal of the Count is spot on. Also Renfield. Renfield is probably the biggest draw to the original Dracula because he's just wacky and goofy and fun. And, Renfield, great. Also, Van Helsing is very accurate to the novel. I think it's a pretty good adaptation of Bram Stoker's novel. and it's creepy. I like how they use the effect on Bela Lugosi's eyes to have them kind of glow in the dark, and yeah, it's creepy. Bela Lugosi's great. It's the best role of his career, hands down. So give Dracula a spin if you haven't seen it. At number 38, we got Leprechaun. I freaking love Leprechaun. Not only is it the best movie Jennifer Aniston's ever been in, way better than Friends, but Warwick Davis is just legendary to be in like 6 Leprechaun movies. And I mean, yeah, Leprechaun is just phenomenal. There's so many fun moments in Leprechaun 1 alone, not even to mention Leprechauns 2 and 3. And I think out of all the slasher-type franchises, I think Leprechaun is the only one that really gets, like, having that many sequels is absurd. That's why there's, like, 2 movies where he's just in the hood, and then there's Leprechaun 4 in space. But the original Leprechaun is the most serious one. Not serious, per se, but, like, before everything just explodes into ridiculousness, so... and it's got Jennifer Aniston. The franchise never had as talented anyone after that, but Leprechaun is just awesome. And there's so many fun set pieces and ideas about how Leprechaun works and, you know, what his whole deal is. And he's just so fun to watch. I can't get enough of Leprechaun. Number 37, we have Child's Play. Chucky is a fun concept. I like how it builds up to Chucky. And, you know, you kind of question, is Chucky actually alive, or is the kid doing it, or, like, what's going on with Chucky? Originally, it was going to be a lot more suspenseful, but, you know, I think revealing Chucky kind of early on as a sentient doll is a smart decision, because Brad Dourif is just phenomenal. I also like the remake, and oddly enough. I got to see the remake when it came out, and Mark Hamill gives a perfectly fine personality to Chucky, but you know, the original obviously is really fun, and Chucky's a blast to watch. He's really cool. At number 36, we have Nosferatu. You know Nosferatu, everyone knows Nosferatu. What I find interesting about Nosferatu is that it's one of the first movies to be created because of a copyright dispute, because when it was made, Bram Stoker's novel was still technically, you know, not public domain, so they had to change it to Count Orlok. And I think Count Orlok is a really creepy looking vampire, so I'm putting it a couple spots ahead of Dracula, just because, like, on the scare factor, Orlok is absolutely like nightmare fuel. He's so creepy, and I love it, you know. He's really scary to look at. You know, which doesn't work so much for an adaptation of Dracula, because the idea is that Count Dracula is supposed to blend in with the London elite, and he can't exactly do that if he's this bold gremlin, but, like, you know, it's not a straightforward adaptation of Dracula, and I don't think it should be. It's pretty much its own thing, so cool stuff all around. Alright, at 35, we got The Tingler. This is one of the William Castle classics in which Vincent Price plays a doctor who discovers a weird creature that lives in your spine, and it's responsible for all the tingles you get when you're scared. This one came with a gimmick where they put a shocker into your seat, and you could feel an electric shock, and you'd think it was the Tingler back there. So, innovative gimmick as always with William Castle things. And I think the Tingler is cool because it's a lot about, you know, movie projectionist culture, and when the blood turns red, I mean, that's just a fantastic effect. I love that. It's so rare that you get to see black and white and color film mix, and the Tingler really was ahead of its time in that department, because, I mean, that's just so cool to think that, like, the whole bathroom is painted black and white, and then they just have the blood be red. I bet audiences were weirded out when they saw that. The Tingler is really cool. Also, it's just a really gross-looking thing. And to think that there's one of them inside all of us, I mean, that's just some new age stuff. That's scarier than having chakras inside you, for gosh sakes. Number 34, we got Sorority Babes in the Slime Ball Bolorama. Some people will tell me that I shouldn't have put this high up, but something about this movie just draws me in and fascinates me. It's a really weird movie, but it's also, like, really fun to watch. The premise is bonkers. The characters are all weird. You know, but they're you can get behind them. They're very likable, and Linnea Quigley, obviously horror legend. I think this is probably her best movie, just because the character she plays, Spider, is such a compelling protagonist, and then you have Babs Peterson as the antagonist, and it's really, I mean, just great acting. Also, the puppetry on Uncle Impy is just like something else. So I gotta put Sorority Babes in the Slimeball Bowl-orama at number 34. Good fun. Got the Vavitch. I know it's technically pronounced The Witch, but I'm calling it the Vavitch because that's how it's spelled. Robert Eggers is a respectable director, really elevated horror to new heights here in the 2010s, and created kind of the 2010s horror aesthetic. That's the aesthetic of respectable horror that we see later on in movies like Hereditary. The Vavitch is a breakout movie. It's creepy. It's great. It's a great movie about witches. You know, it's spooky. I like me some witch stuff, and I think part of the draw of The Witch for many people is the historical accuracy, all the research Robert Eggers did into early American customs and like that, because if you're making a witch movie set in colonial New England, you want to make it as authentic as possible, and part of the creep factor of the Vavitch is like, this looks so realistic, you know. This ain't your old-fashioned timey witch riding around on broomsticks with the wart, you know. This is like a real witch here. This is an actual lady in league with Satan here. Number 32, we got Halloween, John Carpenter's classic about, you know, Mike Myers, Laurie Strode. Jamie Lee Curtis is great in this, and I can see why it started off a fantastic career for her. None of the other Halloweens are as good as Halloween 1. I mean, Halloween 1 is captivating. It's full of just spookiness, and one of the best slasher movies. Possibly, well, I guess not the best. There are a few up here on the list ahead, but for what it's worth, Halloween is really good. And, you know, the new Blumhouse version is like, the Halloween Kills. Okay, we've seen enough of this. But if you just watch the original and don't watch any of the other ones, Halloween H2O or Freddy versus Michael or whatever, you know, then it's a great horror movie just on its own. At number 31, we got Frankenstein, the original Frankenstein with Boris Karloff. I think this is Boris Karloff's best performance, easy. Maybe The Mummy, but I mean, Frankenstein is just iconic. I like how the movie invented pretty much the look of Frankenstein, because in the original novel he's not green. He doesn't have the bolts. So this movie pretty much single-handedly invented the way that Frankenstein ought to look, and it's great. It doesn't have Igor. He's only in the sequels, I think, but it's fun to watch as Frankenstein slowly, you know, builds up his monster, and you know, Frankenstein's monster, or I guess, you know, I'm going to call him Frankenstein always. At number 30, we got Manos, The Hands of Fate. No, I'm not memeing around right now. Manos, The Hands of Fate is a great horror movie. It does what horror movies should do. It succeeds in its objective to be unsettling. It's an unnerving movie to watch. Whether that's because it's low budget or because the acting is so, like, wooden and stiff or something, you feel like you're watching an alternate reality and you really don't want to leave. Torgo's iconic. I think Torgo's awesome, and you know, it's not a good movie, but it is a good horror movie because it's pretty scary. I think if I pulled in to that house and the Master was there and I saw that painting of the Master, I mean, he's intimidating. So what more could you ask for? I think it's a really inspiring movie in that it's a testament to what you can do if you have a low budget. Obviously, the people who made Manos weren't trying to make, you know, the next big thing or the huge masterpiece. They were just trying to put together a decent, like, you know, a cult horror movie where this family gets abducted. And for that, for what's worth, I think Manos is cool. Manos is really, it's psychedelic, it's weird, and they don't make movies like that anymore. At 29, we have Ghostbusters. Technically a comedy, but I think there's some pretty scary moments in Ghostbusters, you know, that could, like, scare you if you've never seen Ghostbusters before. When Sigourney Weaver turns into Gozer or whatever, the key keeper or the lock picker or whatever. That's pretty spooky, and Ghostbusters is fun. I like Ghostbusters. I think Ghostbusters 2 is also great, but Ghostbusters 1 just is good because it's got an all-star cast and great direction, and there's no other movie before or after that perfectly captures the charm and mass appeal of Ghostbusters. I think Ghostbusters deserves a spot on this list at number 29. At 28, we got Cannibal Holocaust, the actual first found footage movie, and Blair Witch Project stole Cannibal Holocaust's thunder. But I think Cannibal Holocaust is probably the best found footage movie that's ever going to happen. And it's the first, and once the Blair Witch Project comes out, it's all kind of downhill from there. I'm surprised none of the Blair Witch Project sequels are found footage, because that's like the whole appeal of the franchise, But Cannibal Holocaust completely outdoes Blair Witch Project, and it's been a cult movie for too long. I think Cannibal Holocaust needs to get its rightful place in a horror film history. It invented found footage, and the plot is just so cool, and it's great. It's about the mistreatment of indigenous peoples and you wouldn't expect that from a movie called Cannibal Holocaust. You'd think it'd be exploitative and offensive, but it's really just about this stuck-up Italian documentarian who's just he goes where he shouldn't, and he's not used to the Amazonian customs and whatnot. And Cannibal Holocaust, excellent movie, great found footage, really succeeds in that department. Give it a watch. It's really good. At 27, we have Little Shop of Horrors. I've made a whole review on Little Shop of Horrors, so I won't dwell on it too much, but it's Roger Corman's best horror movie. There's also A Bucket of Blood, but I think Little Shop of Horrors succeeds where A Bucket of Blood fails because it's, more low budget and manages to be more interesting and more well-remembered against all odds. Now, there are the Poe movies, but I think Little Shop of Horrors will always be my favorite of Corman's horror movies, just because there's, the Poe movies, for what it's worth, they're not exactly true to Edgar Allan Poe's vision. They're the best Poe movies we'll ever have, but Little Shop of Horrors is just fun. It's an original story, and Charles B. Griffith's script is epic, and Roger Corman's direction is just fantastic. It's amazing. At 26, we have Blacula. I'm putting Blacula over Dracula, because I think Blacula puts a whole new spin on the classic Dracula story. It says, what if there was this African count who was cursed by the original Dracula to be a vampire, and now he's Blacula. And I just think that's such a cool idea. One of the best blaxploitation movies of the 70s, epic opening sequence with the animation of the bat in the cave, and it's just a really fun movie. It's better than Dracula, I'm telling you. Blacula is a massive improvement over Dracula because it gives a whole new angle to the Dracula cinematic universe. And also it gives American, it gives an African American spin to the classic vampire folklore, and I think that's really cool. Blacula is awesome. At 25, we have The Haunting, which is technically a remake, although it's really just an adaptation of the book, so not really a remake. It doesn't have much in common with the original movie. But I'm putting this at number 25 because it's got Owen Wilson, and this should be one of Owen Wilson's more remembered roles, because he's so fun in this, as is Catherine Zeta-Jones. And then you got Lily Taylor as the kind of psychic medium who's suspecting that something isn't right in this haunted house. Well, there is a lot of CGI in The Haunting, and it's really dated and looks really bad. There's also a lot of practical effects, and the haunted house looks cool. It looks like a uniquely spooky, scary house that you would not want to be in alone late at night because it's so haunted, it's so full of ghosts. And I think the story of how the ghosts got there is interesting. And Owen Wilson, if you don't like seeing Owen Wilson, go. Wow. That's a bad impression. But if you don't like seeing Owen Wilson, then this won't be the movie for you. But The Haunting is fun. It's probably one of the best haunted house movies. At 24, we have Motel Hell. Not too many people talk about this one. At first glance, it's kind of a clone of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But I think Motel Hell goes far deeper into the agricultural aspect. You know, with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there are themes of like eating meat and how eating cows is bad and become a vegetarian. But Motel Hell really goes into the cannibal angle, and like it gets ridiculous. Where the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is like a very serious movie, Motel Hell's kind of like a farce. But you know, when you hear the name Motel Hell, you don't assume it's going to be a Texas Chainsaw Massacre ripoff. You assume it's going to be a Psycho ripoff, but I wouldn't even call it a ripoff, really. It just takes a lot of the ideas that make Texas Chainsaw Massacre great, and then it just like makes them kind of corny and kind of like wacky, and I like that. And oh yeah, the bit with the cabbage garden and like the hippies and the hypnotism, that's just that more people should remember that and know about that, because it's hilarious. It's amazing. At 23, we have House on Haunted Hill, not to be confused, of course, with The Haunting of Hill House. I know they sound very different. They're completely different properties. I think House on Haunted Hill is probably the best William Castle movie because it actually manages to inspire you with a genuine sense of dread. Maybe it's the Vincent Price narration, disembodied head over the opening titles. Maybe it's just the really creepy atmosphere that it manages to build up. But there's something very charming about the haunted house aspect. So I'd suggest maybe pairing this up with The Haunting for a good double feature, because you know, House on Haunted Hill has a lot in common in that it's about a group of people who are isolated and locked into this nightmarish mansion and they can't get out, which is a fun concept to explore. Number 22, we have Fright Night. It was kind of between this and Once Bitten with Jim Carrey for this spot, but you know, I already gave Earth Girls Are Easy with Jim Carrey really high rank on my sci-fi list, and I think Fright Night manages to do something kind of rare, which is that it manages to be genuinely scary while also being a really fun and engrossing spectacle. Usually the really scary movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre are kind of subtle and low-key, but Fright Night is both blood-curdling and engrossing. It's really fun to watch. This is mostly due to Roddy McDowall, who shows up as an aging horror star, and he's fantastic in the role. It's like the thing he was born to play. I first heard about Fright Night in a MTV documentary about vampires one Halloween, checked it out, flippin' loved it. It's fantastic. Probably one of the best movies about vampires ever made. So give Fright Night a watch tonight and be ready for the fright of your life tonight. At 21, we have Angel Heart. I think, you know, Mickey Rourke in this, it's so good. Angel Heart is one of Robert De Niro's funnest performances. I especially like the part where he cracks the egg open along the middle. I've always tried to do that, but it's impossible to do. I think Robert De Niro is just like an expert egg peeler or something. And obviously it's a very creepy movie. It really builds up. It really builds up and up and up. You can feel the tension just snap like a string, you know. It's full-on creep factor. And Angel Heart, give it a try. You will not be disappointed. It's so atmospheric. The music, the sax, the frickin' blood from the ceiling. It's unlike any other movie. It's also very ahead of its time. Like, I thought it came out in the 2000s, but it came out in like the 80s, which I just find wild, you know. At number 20 here we have Children of the Corn, which is technically a Stephen King adaptation. I don't think many people think of it as a Stephen King adaptation, but in my opinion, it really is better than Village of the Damned. I think as far as evil children movies go, Children of the Corn also beats out The Omen, just because I think Children of the Corn is cooler with its imagery of corn and that these like rural bumpkins just form this weird cult out in the middle of nowhere because, no parental supervision. They're just out in the middle of the corn, and the idea of the corn growing is so cool. That's really creepy. I like it. Children of the Corn. Creepy frickin' movie, and really good if you haven't seen it. At 19, we have What We Do in the Shadows. This is a party favorite. Everyone likes What We Do in the Shadows. It's a TV show now. Never needed to be. The movie's all you need. But when this came out, it puts New Zealand on the map, puts it into a whole different perspective. I think What We Do in the Shadows is cool because it asks the question that very few other movies do ask, like, what happens when you turn into a vampire? What's the process like of having to detach yourself from mortal society and like become a vampire? And it does that way better than something like Twilight does. There's no love triangles, there's no sap, there's no schmaltz. It's just a very realistic movie. The mockumentary style also is just fantastically executed. It looks like something from the 70s or something, and it's very fun. The cinematography is great. The acting is great. These vampires are a fun bunch, and you just want to hang out with them and check out what their lives are like. And the part with the biscotti is just that's iconic there. Biscotti. Eat your biscotti. At number 18, we got VHS. I think VHS missed a huge opportunity by not distributing itself on VHS. It's a movie about the format VHS, but it only came out on DVD. Like, what were you guys thinking? I think if VHS had distributed itself on VHS, it'd be much more well remembered, but it didn't. I don't know why not. Because for what it's worth, I think this is a good found footage movie. It really plays with the idea of finding lost, creepy, weird VHS, things, and that's something that happens often on VHS. People find really creepy, forgotten shit that, like, you'd never have found if you didn't watch the VHS. You can record anything to VHS, anything could be hiding on VHS. It's a cool concept movie. They play it to its full extent. All these, every section of this anthology is very well done. Obviously, each director brings their own little flair and style and quirks to the table. And I think anthology movies are a cool format that doesn't get done enough, so kudos to VHS for trying it. I just realized I put VHS above Cannibal Holocaust on the list, and that doesn't feel right, because, they're both found footage, and VHS isn't better than Cannibal Holocaust. Oh well, what you gonna do? At 17, we have Nomads. I don't think this movie is remembered enough. It's so weird. It's so weird. It goes in a completely different direction from how you think it's gonna go. At the same time, it's got to be one of the creepiest movies ever made. I'm not ranking these just on how creepy they are. I'm ranking them on, like, how fun they are to watch. But if Nomads was, it'd be the creepiest if you put it on the. It'd be at number one if I was rating these on the creepiness factor, because Pierce Brosnan just brings a kind of electricity to the role that I don't think any other actor ever could. I mean, this is his first role post-Remington Steele. This is before he was James Bond. This is before he was big. But nobody remembers this movie. And I just think that's like a giant shame, because it's so scary. Nomads is scarier than anything else. It's so creepy. You will be looking over your shoulder and, counting sheep, or trying to stay awake because you don't want the nomads to get you. Also, the rock in this is totally rocking out. Nomads, fantastic. It's got Adam Ant, which is I find weird. At 16, we have Eraserhead. You know Eraserhead. I know Eraserhead. Everybody knows Eraserhead at this point. David Lynch. Man, oh man, is this... there's a lot of stuff that he's made that could be considered horror, but I think Eraserhead is probably the closest to horror, and the black and white aspect gives it that nice classic feeling, and the Peter Ivers song, In Heaven, just what a gosh dang jam. It's the kind of stuff that just sticks with you. Eraserhead is poignant, it's deep, it's cool looking, above all else. I mean, got the Lynch vibes all over it. And it's just, it's his breakout movie, so it should be appreciated as such. It's the Genesis point of Lynch, and I think it's a classic. It's really good. At 15, we have The Ring. The Ring is pretty scary. Just like with VHS, it makes use of VHS. And I think it makes better use of VHS because it was made at a time when VHS was still in common use. And the idea of finding a VHS, and then Samara starts creeping out with her long hair. She's just creeping out, and there's the well. Oh my gosh, what a scary freaking concept. We follow Naomi Watts as she slowly spirals into crazy town because she's just feeling bonkers, She's like, what the heck is going on? I'm going to die in 7 days. Oh my gosh. And it's fantastic. The premise is great. Obviously, it's a remake of a Japanese movie, but, I like the American version. So sue me. At 14, we have Carrie, Brian De Palma's classic starring Sissy Spacek as Carrie. I think this is the best Stephen King adaptation, or except The Shining. I think this is the second best Stephen King adaptation. I just spoiled what's up ahead, but oh well. Carrie is fun. It's very groundbreaking. It's a formative movie. It really changed the game. There's feminist movies before this, like Rosemary's Baby and Valley of the Dolls and Stepford Wives, which of course is really underrated. But I think Carrie is just a very creepy concept, and Sissy Spacek gives the performance of a lifetime. Iconic. Carrie is frickin' wacko, and it's pretty spooky. It gets pretty heavy and dark at times. Carrie is slightly beat out by number 13. That's right, we're talking Willard. Willard is one of the very few horror movies that's like really sad and like not sad in like a scary way or anything, but just like poignant. It's really like depressing, I guess you could say. But it's also pretty creepy. I like the use of rats. Renfield and Dracula's like rats, thousands. And we never got to see that image come to life until Ben and Socrates are just leading their epic swarm, their epic militia of rodents. I think Willard is such a great character. You see him grow and develop and start, amassing this massive rodent army, and he kills people with them, and it's just so cool. Especially the sequence where the girl gets him a cat. Also, the girl in this is really good. And the boss is just so hateable. You just hate his ass. So, Willard does something very few horror movies do, and that's like, it makes the killer like really sympathetic, and it makes the mice just so cute. You can't hate them because they're like adorable. So Willard is like a tonally unique horror movie, I would say. At 12, we have The Lighthouse. I think The Lighthouse is even better than The Vivitch when it comes to Robert Eggers' filmography. Willem Dafoe completely sells it. The main guy who now is playing Batman, completely I totally buy it. The Lighthouse oozes nautical adventure and nautical themes, and not enough movies really talk about like the deep sea and deep sea exploration and the all-consuming ocean. I also think The Lighthouse is cool because of the mermaid. The bit with the mermaid is really creepy. I like that. Not enough creepy mermaids in movies, because they would be creepy if you found a human-fish hybrid, and she's just like so scary. The Lighthouse is fantastic, and one of the best movies past decade. I really like it. I just realized I didn't put a Hereditary on this list. Yeah, I guess The Lighthouse and The Vivitch do like warrant a spot, so yeah, sorry Ari Aster. I haven't seen Midsummer yet. Hopefully I get to see Midsummer sometime. Then again, it might just be like The Wicker Man. At number 11, we have What Lies Beneath. You might question why I'm putting this so high on the list. I'm putting it this high on the list because it's just spooky. It's a really scary, spooky movie. Michelle Pfeiffer's fantastic. Harrison Ford is such a convincing psychopath, and you'd never guess that if you just see him in like Morning Glory or like Star Wars. He just seems like such a charismatic, fuzzy guy, but As a psychopath, he's easily as creepy as Jack Torrance. He's so like methodical and devious and like terrible. And it's just a whole new level of depravity on display here from Harrison Ford. And obviously it's kind of an homage to Hitchcock's work, and I think Robert Zemeckis really like nails it, how to make like a weird psychological thriller type thing where like the main character gradually finds things out. It's a lot like Rear Window. So if you like Rear Window, you'll like What Lies Beneath. Obviously Rear Window isn't a horror movie, it's more a thriller, but What Lies Beneath is a horror movie because there's like a ghost involved. And the back of What Lies Beneath says it does for bathtubs what Psycho does for showers, and I have to say it does. It makes you not want to take a bath after you see What Lies Beneath, because the concept is so scary. And if Robert Zemeckis kept doing stuff like this instead of moving on to those horrible Polar Express and fucking Beowulf, those nightmarish computer-animated abominations with image movers, maybe his later career would be more well-respected. At 10, we got Rubber. Mr. Wiseau, just what a visionary. I saw Rubber when it first came out in 2010. It was one of the formative movies I got to see on the big screen. I was pretty young. I was like 8. And it just left a huge impression on me. I think Rubber should be covered in more film courses because it poses a very interesting question. The concept of no reason. And I think it could only come from a total, like, mad genius like Mr. Wiseau, who's, Flat Eric, just what a character. But I think Robert the Tiger, I like him as much as Flat Eric, if not more. Just such a cool character. I can't wait to see what Quentin Dupieux does next, because, you never feel like you're watching a French thing, because his movies are very unpretentious, very, relatable, and Rubber is just really fun. It's such a cool idea. What if a tire just killed people with its mind powers, and it's a tire, Amazing. I think if you haven't seen Rubber, you don't know what you're missing out on. Just let me say that. 9, we have George A. Romero's classic, Night of the Living Dead. That's right. The first ever zombie movie. George A. Romero literally invented zombies overnight. The main actress, I forget her name, incredible. The black guy, incredible. All the other people shacked up in this terrifying zombie house, just incredible. Just a fantastic movie front to back. One that will never be outdated, always legendary, the best zombie movie, the best of Romero's trilogy, or series you could say, and absolutely bomb sauce. Night of the Living Dead delivers. If you like zombies and you haven't seen Night of the Living Dead, you have no idea what a zombie even is, because this movie is the definitive zombies, and amazing. Also, the corpse in the beginning looks so good. They're coming to get you, Barbara. Famous last words. At 8, we have Creepshow. That's right. I think Creepshow is better even than Night of the Living Dead in terms of George A. Romero's output, because it's a collaboration with Stephen King. Also, I'm a comics guy, and Creepshow is probably the best comics adaptation like ever made, because like The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill, The Crate, They're Creeping Up on You, just so much good shit. Yeah, Leslie Nielsen in one. You got frickin' like so much talent. This is one of the rare times Stephen King acts as Jordy Verrill, and every segment is just a winner. Every segment is just concentrated fun. Creepshow. You can never get enough. Once you pop, you can't stop. That's how it is with Creepshow. You will be amazed by the time you finish Creepshow. It's a fantastic watch. It's just so fun. You're like, oh my gosh, the kid's mean dad threw his comic book away, which is also what happened to all the AC comics. They got thrown away as trash. But then like the skeleton shows up outside the kid's room and he's like, oh, come on, and, watch fucking weird shit for half an hour. Guy's gonna get buried up to his neck in the sand, and the tide's gonna come in. It's like, man, that's just sick and twisted and depraved in all the right ways, and I freaking can't get enough of Creepshow. Fantastic movie, so cool. It looks like a comic. It does. At 7, we got Rosemary's Baby, Mia Farrow, and this is just amazing. It's one of the most artistic horror movies ever made. It tries something, and it's the best adaptation of Ira Levin's work. Better than Stepford Wives, better than Boys from Brazil. I really like Rosemary's Baby just because, like, it's so creepy. It is so creepy. You just feel for Rosemary so much the whole time, because everyone's lying to her and everyone's being duplicitous with her, and the couple next door, just there's something kind of weird about them. And the thing about Rosemary being Catholic and her having to come to terms with, you know, the whole Satanist thing is very interesting. I'm an atheist. I usually don't like movies with religious themes like this, where it's God and the devil, but I mean, the witch couple is just so convincing as this creepy couple of kooks who just want to prolongate their Satanist lineage. It's weird and creepy, and yeah, it's really creepy. And Mia Farrow, just performance of a lifetime there. Rosemary's Baby is fantastic. At number 6, we got The Silence of the Lambs, the only movie to win all the Academy Awards or some kind of accomplishment. I forget exactly what. I find it weird that it did that, because there's nothing like that amazing about it, but I think it's the kind of movie that has so much going for it, so much popular appeal. Like you have Agent Sterling's, like, you know, quest to become the best agent, and then you have like the really appealing performance by Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter, and you got Buffalo Bill, and you know, it's a drama, it's a horror story, it's a thriller, you know, all in one. It's got a lot of elements wrapped up into it. So that would explain why it's really the only horror movie to get that many Academy Awards. And, like, yeah, I think it deserves it. Like, it's not the best horror movie, but it is a really good horror movie that would win in that type of scenario with, like, an award show, which, as everyone knows, aren't accurate measures of a movie's quality anyway. They're just like, what do most people like? The Silence of the Lambs is a real crowd pleaser in that regard, because Hannibal Lecter is just such a fun character to listen to, about his fava beans and his Chianti. And you know, you got roommate Miggs, you got just a killer performance from Jodie Foster. This is the role she was born to play. It's fantastic. And after seeing her in Taxi Driver, I mean, she just proves she's got the chops. I mean, this is just on a whole nother level here. Agent Sterling is such a fun protagonist to follow as she has her ups and downs and tries to track down the elusive Buffalo Bill. Just what a cool name, too. Thomas Harris absolutely is an iconic writer, and his Hannibal Lecter series is fun. Good fun. At 5, we got the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Tobe Hooper's masterpiece, with Leatherface and the rest of his wackadoodle family living out in the Texas sticks. The definitive hillbilly horror movie, probably the first really good slasher movie. Came out in 1974, a long ways before Halloween came out, and I think it's so brutal and so intense and so graphic and so gory and such a spectacle. But at the same time, it feels oddly reserved. There's not that much blood in it. It's the suggestion of what's going on in the background that's really disturbing. You know, it's like it's the suggestion of what these people are up to and what they're getting up to. I also think it's really good at killing the main cast off gradually. You know, you start out with like 7 people or so, you know, I forget the exact number. There's like a good amount of people, you know, so you assume like, there's no way these people could all be killed off. But then it's just only the one girl survives, and you know, it's so creepy to see them just systematically picked off. And the best part probably is when the one girl gets up to the house and then she like looks in, And it looks quiet at first. It looks like it's just a Texas house. It's just kind of pleasant. But then Leatherface comes out and he's carrying his big ass chainsaw and he's just like, "Urgh." And Leatherface is so fun. He's just fantastic. Such a fun character. None of the sequels are as good. Just watch the original. It's so good. With the hitchhiker and the frickin' old guy and the grandpa. It's just, oh my gosh, Texas Chainsaw. Good shit. That's what horror should strive to be. At number 4, we have Carnival of Souls. Candice Hilgoss. I don't think enough people know about Carnival of Souls. It is a cult favorite. It's in a lot of stuff. It's in one of my music videos. It's in one of Lana Del Rey's music videos. Because it's a public domain horror movie. It's in the public domain. There's never any copyright on it. And it's a really good 60s horror movie. It's low budget. It's the kind of thing that if you're not into horror, you'd have no idea where it's from. But some of the scenes are just great, like in the department store. It reminds you of Marcia from the Twilight Zone, who's the mannequin lady. It kind of reminds you of that. And there's so much in here that feels like it should be a Twilight Zone episode, but it's just not. It's like a lost Twilight Zone episode that you've never seen before. And it's even creepier in some regards than some episodes of Twilight Zone. The music is so haunting, all that organ. The organ can be easily as creepy an instrument as the theremin if you use it correctly, and Carnival of Souls delivers. And I love the vagueness of the ending. It's so open. It's such a good horror movie. It changed the game. There's so much in this horror movie that you look at and you go, oh, this is where this came from. It's so influential, and yet barely anyone knows about it, except a dedicated cult following. It's a very fondly remembered cult movie in a lot of regards, but it needs more clout. And there's a remake of it, but of course the remake is like really bad. Candice Hilgoss is legendary, and to think that she's only in this one movie pretty much. Her performance as Mary Henry is just like another level. You will be so screwed up once you finish with Carnival of Souls. It's a trip to nightmare land, let me tell you. Alright, number 3. We got Psycho. Psycho. I gotta put number 3 because it's just so dang good. Anthony Perkins' performances. Norman Bates is great. You got the shower scene. You got Arbogast. I love Arbogast. He's so good. Martin Balsam. And you got, the money, and she steals it. And Psycho. Who doesn't know Psycho? Everyone freaking loves Psycho. Psycho is great. There's so many parts of Psycho that feel like they're like newer than they are, because that's just how far ahead Hitchcock saw. That's just how far ahead of the game he was. And having seen a lot of Hitchcock stuff, I've seen Rear Window, I've seen North by Northwest, I don't think there's better than this. Just because Robert Bloch's a really good writer, and the novel Psycho is like also really good. So excellent source material, and Hitchcock brings the heat. Norman Bates is the original slasher. This is the original slasher movie. It invented so much of the horror tropes and everything. It's one of the most influential movies ever, and it's fantastic. At number 2, we have The Shining. On this and my sci-fi list, I put 2001: A Space Odyssey at number 2 on my sci-fi list. I'm putting The Shining at number 2 here. I could just give Kubrick the easy wins in both cases, but I'm not like other film review YouTube reviewers, so I'm trying to be quirky and give the number 1 spot to something that you wouldn't expect. Because if I'm just gonna give The Shining number 1, then what's the point of even making a list in the first place? But The Shining is awesome. Jack Nicholson brings the heat. Probably the best role of Shelley Duvall's career. She's so good. She's so phenomenal. You totally it's great. And it's one of the rare cases where the book that Stephen King wrote is not that good, and Kubrick just took it and elevated it. Usually with the Stephen King adaptation, it's very faithful, but Kubrick changed so much that the movie is a completely different product than the book it's based on. I also like it, of course, because it's set in Colorado, And when it comes to like asking for a good story set in your state, you can't ask for more than The Shining. It's so cool. Even though the Overlook Hotel isn't real and you can't visit it, and the Stanley Hotel is the real one, and it's in Estes Park, and it's not isolated, and there's no maze. I wish there was a maze. I wish there was a big old hedge maze that you could get lost in. It sounds so fun. Just go up to the Colorado Lounge and the Gold Room, and you go in there and avoid the bartenders in there. It'd be so cool if the Overlook Hotel was real. But Jack Nicholson, man, I'd love to be chased around by Jack Nicholson. You want some ice cream duck? Classic. The Shining at number 2. So you're probably wondering then, what gets the number 1 spot? What's my all-time best horror movie selection of all time? And if you know me and you know what I've been saying is a really good horror movie and you haven't heard it yet, then you probably know what this one's going to be. Hold on to your hats. That's right. Number 1, we got Suspiria, Dario Argento. I think Dario Argento completely takes the cake. Suspiria, where to even begin? The premise is so cool. The setting is so cool. It's an Italian movie. It's set in Germany, but it's an Italian movie, and the main girl is American, and she's speaking English, and it's not dubbed. And then some of the characters are Italian, and they are dubbed, and some of the characters are Italian, and they're speaking English, but it's like Italianish, or it's like they're putting on an American accent. So it leads to a really disjointed, weird feeling. But the main girl is great. Such a good actress. She completely nails it. The barbed wire is such a gruesome way to go. Suspiria is cool because it's one of the rare horror movies that is beautiful to look at. It's so pretty. I wish more horror movies kind of explored like the juxtaposition between this really gruesome and scary subject matter and like looking visually amazing. Mandy obviously tries that. The Love Witch tries that. There have been some attempts in recent years to kind of think about how a horror movie can look really pretty, but Suspiria is not only concerned with aesthetic, it's also such a cool idea, and it's such a good witch movie, and I just love it. Dario Argento was thinking on another level when he made this. It's his best movie, hands down. And don't get me wrong, when we're talking someone as skilled and talented as Dario Argento, I think Deep Red, Opera, Tenebrae, Inferno, they're all really good. Like, there's practically no such thing as a bad Dario Argento movie. Even his later stuff, which everyone says is bad, Mother of Tears is fine. It's a fine movie. But I think Suspiria taps into some kind of subconscious terror that, like, only... So, it's a scary movie, it's fun, and it's also visually amazing. And I think it succeeds in every department a horror movie can possibly succeed. And it's not as well known as The Shining, and now it's even being overshadowed by its lame remake, which everyone's like, oh, it's so good. It's not directed by Dario Argento, so I don't give a shit. The man is a living legend, and I was surprised to learn he's even still alive. I thought he was dead, but he's apparently going to come out with a new movie called Black Glasses pretty soon, which I am so excited to check out. Suspiria is so cool. It paints witches in a whole new light that's never been done before, and the theme song from Goblin is just like killer. It's so good. It's such a good horror theme song. And it's a risky move, to have this like prog rock band do the soundtrack to your horror movie. But much like how with Halloween, John Carpenter has those synths, which you don't normally think is scary. You normally think of synths like, ooh, disco, Much like how the Halloween theme is creepy even though it's made out of synths, the Suspiria theme is so creepy even though it's like prog rock. It's basically like the same genre as Owner of a Lonely Heart, but Goblin just makes the best horror movie theme songs. And Suspiria is so great, the song and the movie. And, it's so good, Suspiria. I think more movies should try to be like Suspiria. I think Italian horror and, giallo particularly, even though Suspiria isn't a giallo movie, but I think more movies should try for that kind of aesthetic. And I think if there's one thing that you can take away from this list, it's that unlike sci-fi, which has had a real decline in recent years, and, Midnight Special, I think, was the only one from the 2010s, that and Super 8, that was on my sci-fi list. Sci-fi is kind of not experiencing a renaissance so much right now, but horror really is. You got The Vivitch, you got The Lighthouse, you got Mandy, you got Hereditary, you got Midsummer. You have two great directors at the helm, Robert Eggers and Ari Aster, who are both have their own unique style, their own unique aesthetic, their own unique framing devices. And I know I didn't put Hereditary on here. Oh well. It's not necessarily one of the best 50, but I want to see Midsummer. I haven't seen it. I've seen The Strange Thing About the Johnsons, which definitely has the elements that Ari Aster later incorporates. Ari Aster's next thing is just going to be a comedy, which I think is interesting. It's nice to see him switch things up and go to a new genre to give someone else the chance to become big in the horror game. I myself have put together one short horror film. You might have seen me, and it's pretty spooky. And I think horror movies are kind of easier to make than sci-fi, just because they can be minimalist, like the Blair Witch Project, obviously, which has a really cheap budget. So there's more entry to horror movies than to sci-fi movies. Also because horror movies have a tradition of being kind of low budget and campy and cheesy, like with Sorority Babes and the Slime Ball Bolorama. So there are a lot of directions horror could go in. And in the upcoming decade, I'm optimistic about horror. Out of all the movies I saw from the 2010s in theaters, the horror movies were the ones I was the most into, the most hopeful about, actually. Like, more than any other movies, the horror movies were the ones I remember. The Lighthouse and Hereditary and Rubber, and I remember those. Those stick in my brain because they're so good. And it's nice to think that, there's some good movies up in the future that I can look forward to. So that's my top 10 list of horror movies. Check some of them out. Some of them are pretty underrated, like Motel Hell. And, I don't think too many people talk about Willard that much anymore, which is a shame, because good movie. I also got, obviously, Blacula and the Tingler. I don't think enough people talk about the Tingler. It's good stuff. So check those out, and that's going to do it for tonight. Hope you enjoyed this look into the weird, the wacky, and the horrifying as we checked off the top 50 horror movies, or my top 50 as I rank them. That said, if you like what you saw tonight, then write to Nicholas Cicada, 1424 Columbine Street, number 1, Denver, Colorado 80206, for some excellent comics. I got some horror comics. If you're looking for a sheer terror, then check out Dog Liker. I also got some really creepy stuff up ahead, so if that tickles your fancy, then check my catalog out. I produce top-tier content. That said, that's going to do it for this exciting list, and I might do some more of these in the future. I don't know what genre, maybe comedy. Maybe I'll do a comedy one. I don't know. Anyway, sayonara, suckers.